Zocco's Modern Life. Zocco's Modern Life.
And welcome to the Zocco's Modern Life podcast. I am Joey Zocco, and today I'm joined by Jordan Katz once again. Jordan, how's it going?
What's going on, Joe? Thanks for having me on again.
You're welcome. Well, we had to. It's that time of year. It should be starting to get cold, but it's not. At least in Connecticut, where I am, it's still 60, which is weird considering the NBA is about 25 games in, and so we're going to get into that a little bit, and we'll talk some NFL and kind of get ready for the playoffs that are almost here. I wanted to start with this though. It's a little off topic. I don't know if you saw it yesterday. Bo Ryan, I think, surprised a lot of people by announcing that he's retiring, like, in a post-game press conference. And I listened to it was like 9 minutes or whatever. He really didn't take any questions. He explained kind of what was going on. And short explanation is, he was going to retire at the end of last year, and the guy he wants to take over for him, his longtime assistant was having trouble with his dad with cancer, so he knew his assistant couldn't do it then, so he kind of held out a little while, and that's why he decided now. And I just wanted to throw it to you. I mean, we've been to, obviously, not as many post-game press conferences as, a professional beat reporter or whatever, but we've been to a couple in our time, and when I listened to it and heard kind of how he did it, I would have been so surprised. I can only imagine the faces of the reporters sitting there expecting to get cliche answers of the game that pretty sure they won last night. It wasn't a big game. It was at home. Kind of just whatever is a normal game in a regular season. And then for Bo Ryan to kind of throw this out there, I would have been so surprised.
Yeah, I think they were probably actually even more surprised than everybody else was, just because they got the firsthand account of catching it right out of his mouth. I'm so glad you started here, because Bo Ryan's legacy at Wisconsin, I think, is going to be supremely understated. He hasn't had the greatest recruiting classes while he's been there. He hasn't been the big name in the Big Ten while he's been there, but they have always been competitive. In more recent memory, they've had really good teams that have made runs in the NCAA. In the NCAAs, they never really got to the Final Four until last year, when they made it all the way to the national championship game, and honestly lost to Duke. I don't actually think Duke played the better game last year. I think it was more Wisconsin losing that game than Duke winning it. I thought Wisconsin's execution on the offensive side of the floor lacked in big moments. Yep. But he is a tremendous head coach. His presence is going to be missed with Wisconsin, especially this season. I didn't think this was one of their particular good teams going in. When I handicapped the field preseason, I had them at a 9 seed. I didn't think this was one of their better teams going into the season, and I think his presence is going to be missed, because the real reason why I put them even that high as a 9 was strictly because of him and because of his ability to maximize talent on that bench. So I'm kind of worried about this program moving forward. I understand he is the guy that he has handpicked, which is good. It's always good to have somebody that can come in and step in right away and has a good rapport with the team and can pick up where the coach left off. But he had a tremendous career, and this is definitely an immediate blow to the Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah, and as they say, death taxes in Bo Ryan. So now it's
That's right.
Death taxes, unfortunately. So I thought that was a good place to start. I mean, I've been fortunate in the past month or so to sit in front of Gino Auriemma, who's a interesting character, as we all know, but it's even, those post-game press conferences are interesting, to say the least. And it's on the level of him one day after a game against, Team X saying, yeah, I'm done. It's that surprising of a level. Obviously, Bo Ryan kind of saw it coming in his own mind and is older, but it's on that level of surprise. As I said, NBA coming up, NFL coming up. I just thought that would be a good place to start. But Let's go in. I mean, I know we're going to have some local people listening. Let's start with the New York Knicks. Jordan Katz's favorite team there. I have the record here. As you can tell, we are very prepared for this one. They're 11-14, and I'm going to let you just go, and we'll start. I'm curious what you think of Porzingis, who was getting a lot of attention. He was playing well, but I also think half of it was because of where he plays. So I'm curious on what you think about him, and he's cooled off in the last couple of games, and I'll kind of jump on whatever you say. So
it's funny. It's funny, Joe. I was talking with one of my buddies the other day, and we're talking about just basketball in general, and he randomly brings up Porzingis, and he goes, Porzingis has flipped from being underrated to being incredibly overrated, and I think that's 150% accurate. Kristaps Porzingis has a lot of time to grow. He's going to eclipse the most minutes he played in Latvia this year. I think the projection is just off the wall as to how many minutes that he is going to play in terms of last year versus this year. My personal opinion is that I've liked what I've seen. I don't know how you can't like what you've seen. I really like his toughness, and I like his grit, and I like his ability to battle through bad shooting nights and not get discouraged. And you see his defensive intensity keep up. Carmelo Anthony. Sorry, I had something in my throat.
That's okay. That's what happens when you talk about the Knicks. Just things happen. Go ahead.
I just get
all choked up and warm and fuzzy.
A little bit. That's right. But I think you have to like what you've seen out of him. Now, on the flip side, I haven't seen Derek Fisher coach a game in, what's he been there, 100 games or so?
Yeah.
So there's that. The thing that just caught me completely off guard, which, by the way, for those listening, was the trigger to this podcast, was watching the Knicks and the Kings and watching Carmelo, who, by the way, swears that he could not find Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah.
Couldn't get to him on the low block. How that's possible, I don't know. I was staring at the play. I saw the double team. I saw the ability to rise over defenders and throw the pass. I don't know how you couldn't have gotten it to him. Even for argument's sake, if you couldn't have, I'm pretty sure Aaron Aflalo could have had lunch in the right corner for three. That's what started this podcast. But I think as an overall, I think you have to be pleased with where the Knicks are. The Knicks are competing, which I think is as much as any Knicks fan could have hoped for this year. And I think you like the direction of the team because I think Kristaps Porzingis was a good pick. You still have Carmelo, who I believe that Carmelo's best place with this team is the weak side of the triangle. You stick him on the weak side of the triangle, and when the ball reverses with about 8 seconds to go on the shot clock, you tell Carmelo to go be isolation Carmelo. If Carmelo touches the ball 25 times in a game and shoots 20, I actually think that that's the Knicks' best chance to win. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Melo is an interesting dynamic that this team forced themselves to have to deal with because of the contract they gave him, the no trade clause that they included in that deal, the way that he conveniently got knee surgery after signing his most recent big contract. All of that is a very interesting dynamic to throw into this rebuilding team. But I'll preface what I'm going to say with I'm going to sound like a Nets fan, and I know the Nets suck. Thanks. That's good to know. Thanks. And everything I say. Well, yeah, I know. But I was looking to have 7 wins is crazy. I don't know how that happened.
You know what's amazing is that they have 7 wins.
I know.
That's the thing that gets me is that this team, in my opinion, I honestly think this is the second worst roster in basketball, next to the Sixers. And it could even be worse with the Sixers healthy.
Okay, now, we're done. I just wanted to say that I am aware that every time I make a point, you can just say, well, your team sucks, so you're better. I get it. All right, I know. That goes without saying.
I wouldn't do that.
No, not you. I just mean, anybody else that likes to get under my skin. But yes, and I got it. And I think the Lakers are competing with a worse roster, but the Nets are definitely bottom three roster wise. And we'll talk about a little fun trade that I want to get your opinion on later. But the Knicks, so Porzingis, I agree. I think your friend put it very well. He was very underrated and then has now eclipsed that to being overrated because of where he plays and how well he was playing early on. The minutes thing might have been last week sometime. There was something about Porzingis is approaching, or probably now is around 700 minutes this year. And he played 1,000 minutes all of last year. So, by the time 2016 rolls around, I would imagine he will have played the total amount of minutes this year that he played all of last year. So that's what you were talking about. It'll be interesting to see. Rookies usually fade, and then rookies, because it's like a doubly long year compared to college. But then rookies from overseas fade even more for that exact reason, the amount of minutes they're going to play. But I like Porzingis, and I get made fun of a lot because I was just skeptical initially because I just don't know how much. I wasn't watching a lot of Knicks games, and I know he was playing well, but I don't know how much of it was ESPN and the media having a story to talk about, and that was elevating his abilities, or if he was actually playing well, and it was through 10 games. All right, it's only 10 games. All right, now it's through 20 games, and that's legit, but he's starting to fade. So we'll see. I do think he is a good pick compared to everybody else now, at least at this point. I still think that there are people taken around him. I think Moutier will eventually be better than him. I think Hazonia is, as we talked about with our drafting and, coming into the year, I still like him, I think, as a better pro eventually just because of where the game's going. But, I just find it funny that people, were so openly booing and now can't stop applauding the Knicks. So I'm telling everybody to pump the brakes.
Well, from my end, I had Porzingis as one of my top picks in last year's draft class. I thought that his game actually translated well. I thought he was more Nowitzki and less Bargnani. And so nothing this season has surprised me. Not even the growing pains, by the way. I didn't think he was Nowitzki from the jump. Let's get that confused. He needed time to grow, and he still needs time to grow. But it's really interesting when you look at the Knicks, and I made this point, and there's no way to know this, but I made this point in passing to one of my friends. Is it possible that Phil Jackson's plan actually doesn't include Carmelo Anthony? Is it possible that the Knicks' plan is to see what they can do while Carmelo is here, but really use the cap room that they've got in years like 2017 when Russell Westbrook's up, and in years like 2018 when Curry's up, and even with the younger superstars, the Wigginses, the players that have been drafted in recent memory that are expected to grow into stars, not necessarily, the guys like Wiggins, the guys like Parker, the guys like Antetokounmpo. Is it possible that that's their plan, not trying to build a team around Carmelo Anthony? And I think that's an absolutely fair argument to make, because the bottom line is it's going to take 2 or 3 years for the Knicks to be really good, even if they hit on Porzingis draft-wise, and even if they hit on a 2017 draft pick. It's going to take a couple of years for them to be really good, unless they surprise everyone and sign Kevin Durant.
which is my favorite thing that my Knicks fan friends like to bring up.
That ain't going to happen. So
yeah, well, if that was the plan, then I understand the Aaron Aflalo signing, because that was a 2-year with is that a team option? I'm looking at their player option. They gave him a player option for next year. So whatever. 2 years total doesn't matter. But signing Robin Lopez at $13 million a year through 2019 does not fit that plan. But then they got Porzingis. and Jerry and Grant. So I mean, they don't have a lot of money on the books, let's say in the summer of 2017. So you know, they are going to have to spend. They're going to have money this summer again, and it'll be interesting to see how much of it they tie up in the future. But yeah, I mean, Melo is. Does he end up in Miami? I mean, would the Heat, if they don't get Dwight, which is the other thing I had on my short list, is a very new thing that Dwight is unhappy and might end up in Miami, but
I don't think Carmelo's going any. I don't think he's going anywhere. I just wonder if his best chances to win in New York are at the tail end of this contract.
Yep.
Much like David Wright with the Mets currently. David Wright signed a big deal with the plan that was mapped out, and the plan was, listen, your first few years in this deal are going to be difficult, but you stay with it, and we stick with our plan. The last few years, we're going to be competing for championships every single year, and that's kind of the way the Mets look. The Mets look like a team that is going to build for last year and be a playoff team for at least the next 2 seasons. So maybe that's the direction of the Knicks' plan and of where they want to go. By the way, I think we have officially talked about every team in the NBA named the Golden State Warriors long enough.
Yeah,
I think we have to go to Golden State.
Yep. The last thing is I don't know if I trust that Phil Jackson has a plan, and or if he's going to move on. Yeah, go ahead.
That's certainly fair.
Okay, and I don't know if he's going to be able to move on from Derek Fisher in time for the plan to work. And that's where we can leave the Knicks. Yeah, so the Warriors. Wow. I picked them in the Western Conference Finals, but now it looks like we're gonna. This is a problem, and they were undefeated, as we all know, as of this past weekend. 24-1, and their numbers are crazy. Curry has gotten better somehow, and I'm sorry I didn't believe in that could happen. Yeah, they've been doing this without Harrison Barnes. They kept the streak going for a couple weeks without Harrison Barnes, who should be coming back soon. And Klay Thompson rolled his ankle and was dealing with some stuff. But this team, and I'll let you, kind of take us wherever you want after this. But this team, the way this team can go small, and I don't mean like small as in, Bogut and Draymond Green and whatever. I mean Draymond Green at center and still defend the post. And it's not just going small, but it's having the pieces to go small and be more effective than any other lineup. That lineup with Draymond Green at center, and I believe then Harrison Barnes, Iguodala, Klay, and Curry, that lineup was their best lineup by far during this streak when they had everybody kind of healthy. And they really would go to that lineup in the fourth quarter. They would go to that lineup in the fourth quarter and finish teams. Like teams would hang around, and that lineup was the right hook. And it's crazy what they do matchup-wise to teams. It really is.
They really are a matchup nightmare. They can go big. They can go small. They can match up with you any which way they want, and they can force you into whatever game they want to force you into. I think the most underrated part about Golden State is that if you're a team that plays up-tempo and they believe they are better at that game than you, then they're going to play that game with you and beat you by it. If you're a team that plays slow and they think that they can slow it down and beat you by it, they're going to slow it down and beat you by it. They're going to slow it down and use their defense and offensive execution to beat you. And I think probably the thing that keeps them where they're at right now, besides the fact that Steph Curry is just on another planet, is their ability to move the ball on offense and their ability to play team defense. That can't be overstated enough, is the impact that defense has on that offense. All of them say it all the time. If you listen to their interviews, they will all say, well, it starts with defense, and it starts with defense. And you could turn around and say, yeah, sure, it starts with defense. Meanwhile, you guys shoot 55% from the field,
right,
43% from three, and you beat a team by 17 points. But it really does. It starts with their defense, and it starts with their defense getting stops, and then they can get out and run. You can't get out in transition if the team's putting the ball in. That's simple basketball 101. You've got to get stops first, and this team is very good at doing that.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I am looking at some expanded standings on basketballreference.com, one of my favorite sites. And so the Warriors are 24-1. They haven't lost at home, which is clear, but they are 15-1 in games decided by 10 points or more. And they are 2-0 in games decided by 3 points or less. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They played 2 games that end 3 points or fewer. That are actually like one possession games. And one of those was Utah, I believe, and maybe the Brooklyn overtime game. I don't remember. But that's crazy. And the only other team that is as dominant right now as the Warriors is the Spurs, who we don't have to stay on forever because no one wants to talk about them because it's December, but that's fine. But just looking at the top couple teams that are clearly pulling away from people, like, Golden State, San Antonio, Cleveland hasn't been healthy. When they get Kyrie back is when they're actually going to turn it on. When they get Shumpert back, that's when we're going to see their peak. So they haven't reached their peak yet. The Thunder are still trying to figure out offense with a new coach and 2 guys that both need the ball. And I think it'll work with Durant and Westbrook, but they haven't reached their max either. And then that's kind of it. The Clippers are a mess. The Bulls are going to make a trade, going from there. So the Spurs, if you watch them, which no one likes to do, if you watch them for a quarter, they have the same type of execution and flawlessness on offense. And their defense gets by just enough. They're actually a really good rim protection team, surprisingly, which is huge. And their thing is their offense being able to execute at such a high level that it takes teams out of what they like to do and kind of crushes teams on that end.
I think the thing about the Spurs that's really interesting is Greg Popovich seems to not focus LaMarcus Aldridge thus far. He really hasn't done it. And I think what you always have to consider with Pop is what's the next move? What's the next adjustment that he's going to make to beat you? And in my opinion, hold on 1 second. That's
okay.
My dogs decided to just go crazy in the basement. By the way. If anybody's wondering what that was, that was really nutso. All right, now she stopped. I think what you always have to consider with Pop is what the next adjustment is. And I think the next adjustment for him is just breaking LaMarcus Aldridge out and sticking him in the post and just saying, here you go, stop him. You want to double him? We got shooters. I know he made that comment that he doesn't believe in the three-point shot.
Yeah.
But they've got shooters. You want to double him? We'll just reverse the ball to the weak side. Go ahead, do it. See what happens. I really think that's the scary part about the Spurs is, one, we all know the Spurs are not playing their best basketball yet. And two, they're not even using their best player.
Right.
That's really scary to think about.
Yeah, and everyone likes to think, the Spurs kind of started the ball movement era and, they like to move the ball, and that's actually true when it has to be. That's how Pop adjusts. When he has a team that needs to spread the ball and move it and be a really good passing team like they were in 2013, that was kind of against the Heat where we all saw it. They can do that, but Pop, when Duncan was this type of person, he would get the ball to Duncan and let him go, and then you would have to double him, and then that's when the ball movement came, and that's what they're getting back to between Aldridge in the post, having that ability to give him the ball and watch and just react. Nothing better than read and react offense at any
Absolutely.
level. And then now having Kawhi Leonard take that jump, who is one of my favorite players, and he doesn't want the attention. He signed a contract the way that the Spurs wanted him to, which was, we're going to pay you, but please wait so we can get another superstar for you. there was never a fuss, and that's the way he wants it. And now he is a top 3 player in the league right now. And on both ends, he's still a great defender, and his offense has gotten better to the point where they can now give him the ball, 15, 17, 19 feet from the basket and say, go ahead. And he's allowed to back down, face up, swing the ball when someone comes over to help, drive past his guy. Kawhi Leonard brings that second guy, not to mention they still have Tim Duncan, for stretches, but Kawhi's that second guy that really changes and takes the Spurs to that next level that we're talking about, that the Warriors have that capability of getting to.
Let me ask you a question. Who is what team are you most surprised at in both conferences? And what team are...
I am most surprised in the West by the Dallas Mavericks in a good way. And I am most, surprised that they aren't good is the Rockets, because the Rockets are falling apart. But I'll let you answer. And the Rockets is an obvious one. The Ty Lawson thing isn't working. They fired their coach, which is crazy that they did that, and that's having an effect. But the Mavericks, that Darren Williams is playing like Darren Williams, makes me want to lose my mind.
Yeah,
this is the player. Whatever. Oh, my God. All right. So that's already enough of that. But Dallas is playing really well. They're going to make the playoffs, and that was a team that at least I thought might not make the playoffs. But they still have injuries that could happen, as any team does. But Dallas, we'll see, because they have the Rondo picks thing. So if they're in the top 7, they don't get to, if they're in the bottom 7, they get to keep their pick. So either they're going to go for it. They have to decide soon, probably sometime in January, if they're going to go for the playoffs and then lose their first-round pick, or kind of throw the year to keep their pick. So that's where they're going to be at in a little while. But they surprised me. And in the East, Charlotte is definitely the team that surprises me the most in a good way, as well as the Pistons, because people don't know about the Pistons. But Charlotte without Kid Gilchrist, and I think it might have been Zach Lowe who said this or someone, that the Hornets, when they lost Nickel Kid Gilchrist for the year before the season started, that's a big blow. He's a starter. They're going to not be as good as they could have been. And people around the league initially, according to Zach, was saying, no, that's going to help them. That's going to take a non-shooter off the floor. And now they have Batum, who can do what he does in almost a better way. He's a better two-way player. And now they can play more spacing around Al Jefferson. And it actually has proven to help the Hornets by not having Michael Kidd-Gilchrist on the floor. So I'm very surprised at what Charlotte's doing. They're top 7 offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency so far. So it's interesting how they've built that team and where they are now. And then the next thing, as you said, looking ahead, how does that team take the next step to be a contender? Because right now they're just kind of a playoff team, taking a step to a playoff team. So now we have to see what moves they make to take a step from that to a contender. So
I think the MKG point is spot on. And I think the other player that can't be overlooked in that statement is Marvin Williams, who has really done a nice job filling in for where MKG was going to play. So I think that's a big, big deal in Charlotte. I would agree with you that they're easily the most surprising team in the East. The most disappointing team in the East, me personally, the Bucks have been banged up, so I'm going to give them a pass. Washington being sub 500 is shocking. That's a team that I really thought that this year they were going to break out. They kept most of their pieces. I thought Otto Porter, with another year on his belt, could be a runner for the most improved player. And I really thought this team was going to challenge towards the top of that Eastern Conference. And it just hasn't been that way. They've really been struggling. In the West, again, I agree with you on Dallas, but just to pose another, I agreed with you on Dallas and Houston in the West. Just to pose another argument, the Denver Nuggets winning basketball game surprises me.
Don't worry, that won't keep up. Don't worry. They have no reason to compete for the playoffs. So
I can't imagine it does, but they currently are the 8th seed. So
I know.
I mean, that in and of itself is shocking. And I think the most disappointing team in the West, I mean, the obvious answer is Houston. But how about New Orleans?
Yeah.
New Orleans was banged up, sure. They had Tyreek's injury, which was a big blow. But New Orleans wasn't even competing without Tyreek Evans. And that's a little disconcerting because when you've got one of the best players in basketball, you got to be able to find a way to just get enough with him to just hold the ship down. They just haven't been able to find it. They haven't been able to find the rhythm offensively, the chemistry. They are a laughable 1-12 on the road. Something's got to change in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that they're going to make a trade, and they're already talking about Ashik and Ryan Anderson, but Eric Gordon might be, now that he's an expiring contract, finally, it feels like we've been talking about him forever. Now that him and Joe Johnson are expiring off their huge deals, they both could be potential additions for a championship contender that is trying to get some more scoring or, add a wing. I agree, though. New Orleans has been crazy they're 6-18. Yeah, that's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs now just because it's the West. Before we do have to get to some NFL, but before we do, I'm curious. We like to do trades, and we like to come up with trades. And one of them I heard from Bill Simmons, who, thank God, is back on his podcast. He said, why, they're talking about Derrick Rose, which is a whole separate conversation. And they were saying, why wouldn't the Nets try to get Derrick Rose? And, but they can't, whatever, but they don't have any pieces. And no, that's actually not true, because the Bulls really hate when Derrick Rose is on the floor anyway. If you watch any of the Bulls, they play through Jimmy Butler, and that's when they're at their best. And then they give Derrick Rose a couple possessions a game, and he dribbles into a corner and then passes the ball to the other team. That's how the Bulls season has been going, and they feel like they still have to keep Derrick engaged to a point. So that's why they do it. But Derrick Rose only has 2 years, $40-ish million left. Joe Johnson's expiring. The Bulls could take back Joe Johnson and then flip him again. So it's not like, Joe Johnson and Butler doesn't fit. If they had to throw in Bogdan Bogdanovic, so the Bulls are happy, so they have now a small forward to basically be Mike Dunleavy, that is something the Nets would do. And the Nets really don't have any other option. They can't tank, as we know. And I was like, this is weird. And then after you think about it, it makes sense. They have to take a chance on a player that they can get for less than what he should be worth, which means he's just playing bad now or is perceived as, not as good as he could be, and just take and roll the dice over these next 2 years instead of just being 7-17 for no reason. I think it's something that they could do because Rose, if he then gets a change of scenery and gets to handle the ball, has a chance to be good again with Brook Lopez, with Thaddeus Young. That team is now interesting and at least could win some basketball games, especially in the East. I just think that's an interesting move the Nets could make to kind of keep people interested in kind of, I don't want to say kickstart the rebuild, but slowly begin to turn this thing around.
If I'm handicapping this deal, and if I'm telling you what I think you would have to give, I think Jarrett Jack has to be in the deal.
That's fine.
I think they still need a lead guard, and I think Jarrett Jack splitting time with the rest of that backcourt would surface as a lead guard. Joe Johnson absolutely has to be in the deal, and if I'm the Bulls, I don't even know if I would flip him. I would bring Joe Johnson off the bench, and I would have him lead the second unit, and I think that could still be effective. I know Joe Johnson's lost a step. He's probably lost about 8 of them. Still takes and makes big shots. Yep. So he has to be in the deal. I agree with you on Bogdanovic. Bogdanovic has to be in the trade. And there's no way you won't get away without Bogdanovic being in the deal.
I think
my opinion,
for Rose,
in my opinion, even though it's Derrick Rose, and even though he's got his problems with the Bulls, I think you're going to need a first-round pick in there.
No, see, I was going to say the exact opposite. I think that Bulls might have to give up a future protected pick to make the Nets do it.
He's still Derrick Rose. He's still Derrick Rose. And if
have you seen him though?
Oh, I understand. I get it.
It's ugly.
It's not pretty, but unless you're saying that the market for him is so bad that they have to convince a team to take him, unless you're saying that, I think some team is going to put together a better package if you would throw Derrick Rose on the block than what the Nets just threw up.
I agree. I think
so. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with I wouldn't disagree with the premise that Derrick Rose gets traded. I would just disagree with the premise that the Nets are the team that lands him. If you're looking for a team that really wants to buy and that could use a guy like Derrick Rose to sort of be just someone where they can, get the ball to and say, go get it. Doesn't Orlando make the most sense? Orlando needs that guy.
Yeah.
And
I don't think Orlando shakes up
pieces. I don't either.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a team that on paper makes sense, it's a team like Orlando who needs a guy that when the play breaks down can just go and get 2 points himself. It's a team in the West like Utah that needs a guy that can be a spark plug on offense and that has pieces to deal. That's where I would look for Derrick Rose to get dealt to.
Yeah, no, I was saying more from the Nets perspective. It makes sense for them to do what it takes to get that done. Just because they have no other options besides trying to get a player that they can buy low on to try to eat some money that way, and take on the contract while getting some production on the floor. Yeah, Utah is interesting.
The Nets are in a lot of trouble. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade a spade. The Nets are in a lot of trouble. It probably is not in the Nets' best interest to go get Derrick Rose because you got to rid yourself of cap as quickly as you can. But it probably is in their best interest because of their draft pick situation. So I think it's very interesting. I think the team that is just you just don't know what to do with is Brooklyn because how do you bring that team back? They are in such turmoil with draft picks and no cap situation and no appeal besides the Brooklyn market for any free agent to come play for them.
It's like, and we got to get to the NFL.
Athletic.
Yeah, thanks. It's kind of, with that trade, and I just keep shaking my head. It's kind of like the Nets call the Celtics and go, hey, we kind of want Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, and this is probably verbatim how it happened. Can we get Kevin? Can we have Garnett and Pierce? Yeah. What are you thinking? How about our first round pick this year? We'll swap in 2017. Our pick again in 2018, and some other pieces to make the money work. All right, good deal. Click, and that was it. Then what are you doing? That's not how you make a trade. That had to be the first deal that they offered. Oh, it's so bad. All right, that's actually a great place to leave it. Thanks. I want to hang up. The NFL, we are approaching the playoffs, and my Eagles are rejuvenated. I'm very happy. That's something to change the mood. In the AFC, we have the interesting thing for the bye in the top that now looks like it just cleared itself up with the Andy Dalton injury. I'm actually not even looking at the right standings. And the NFC is kind of all figured out as well, except for seeding and who's going to win the NFC East. I don't know if, where you want to go.
Well, let's start with the NFC East because I think a great place to start is with your Eagles. It was not a month ago. It was a little over a month, actually. That's a lie. About a month and a half ago where we were talking about Chip Kelly's job. And
you were. I was never talking about.
I told you that I didn't think they were going to fire him even if the whole thing went south because it's hard to replace a GM but it didn't go south. It went north. And the Eagles are the team that controls their own destiny. They've got the game against Arizona, which you assume that they're going to lose, but even if they do, they turn around and play Washington at home, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, gives them a chance to knot up the divisional record. They're both 2-2, so you become 3-2 in division. Washington gets a third loss, and then you go into the Giants house final game of the season. You beat them, you're 4-2 in division. So even if you tie with Washington at 7-9, you're in, right, based on division record. So the Eagles, even if they lose this week to Arizona, which is expected, they still control their own destiny, and I think that's a really interesting conversation considering where we were about a month and a half ago, and it just goes to show you that there is one league above all that is the most overreaction theater every single time, every single week, and it's the National Football League. Your team wins on Sunday, you're going to the Super Bowl. Your team loses on Sunday, you're missing the playoffs. And it's really that way for every single fan base. It's why it's the best league, in my opinion. It really is. Yep,
for sure. They figured out how to always be talked about, and that's putting it nicely. I never. Chip Kelly wasn't going anywhere this year. He has 2 years after this on his contract. They're not going to pay him that money to coach the Titans. Okay, and it's not enough time. You know, if this was next year where he had one more year after the current season, then it's a little different. But I think this is really going to turn around. I am very optimistic now after I gave up on them. I picked the Eagles from the beginning, and then after Thanksgiving, as we know, 2 losses. They gave up 35 points in each game, whatever. I gave up. I said, this is it. The Giants or the Redskins are going to win the division. I've officially given up, whatever. And now I jinxed myself, which is great. That worked out very well. I get to be wrong, and my Eagles should win the division. So the Reds, this week is interesting. The game got flexed to Sunday Night Football. It's against Arizona at home. We'll see. No one thought they could beat the Patriots, and as neither did I. And that was still, even a depleted Patriots team, that was something. So who knows? I'm very interested to see how the Eagles are going to play against the Cardinals this week. Is going to be a huge test.
I agree.
Anything over there? No. Okay.
I agree. It's funny. You look at the NFC and you look at the team that you would expect to come out of the NFC, and a popular pick is obviously Seattle, the way they're playing. But in my opinion, I think Arizona is probably the most complete team. I haven't seen Carson Palmer play this good football in his entire career, and I really think the stars could just be aligning for Arizona, because I don't believe that if Seattle draws them in Arizona, I know that game happened on the last game of the season, but there is a chance, I believe, that Arizona doesn't need that game.
Yep.
And if they don't, I don't see why you would play anyone, because they hold a 2-game lead for the 2 seed. I really think, and I understand Carolina's unbeaten. I got it. Carolina's a great football team. No questions asked. But it just sort of feels to me like things are aligning for the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll see. I don't think this is the week for Philly. I think that it'll be the next 2 weeks. I agree with you. I think they will win the next 2 weeks, and I think Philly will win your division at 7-9. Going on over to the AFC, and the only race in the AFC that is interesting.
Yeah, real quick. All I want to say is Arizona's going to have a nice little draw, too, because Carolina's the 1. That means they're going to get, well, see, that's the thing. I wish the bracket just stayed still so we would know who was going to play who. But unless something crazy happens, Arizona.
Most likely Arizona gets Green Bay.
Right. And that'll be better than getting Seattle. I mean, you would assume a team would like that. But a team like Arizona, I agree, is so evenly made and such a good overall team that they're not getting talked about now because Carolina is dominating the the story. And I agree, Arizona is a scary team come playoff time. Okay, sorry, AFC.
The AFC race, I think the tiebreakers have been well documented, but if you don't know what the tiebreaker situation is for the AFC wildcard race, here's the scenario. If all three teams win out, if all three teams tie in any way, shape, or form, the Jets are out. Except if the Jets lose to Dallas this week. If the Jets this week and all three teams from then on out finish 10-6, then the Jets get in over the Steelers. So that's the only way the Jets can get in via tiebreak is they have to lose to Dallas, have Pittsburgh lose one of their games, which could be this week to Denver, maybe not.
Right.
And then they get in via a tiebreak. If the Jets win out, they're going to need one of Kansas City or Pittsburgh to lose because they can't win the tiebreak with all of the teams winning out. So logic would dictate that the Jets are the team that winds up out of the playoffs. And I tweeted a couple days ago that I think if you had told me at the start of the season that there was going to be a 10-6 team in the AFC that would have missed the playoffs, I would have laughed at you. But I think it looks that way, and I think it looks like it's going to be the Jets because I don't see the Jets beating New England, even if New England has a depleted roster, which would put the Jets at 10-6 and puts the Jets out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Good.
I was just going to say, it does feel like the Jets are going to be the odd team out. It does. The Chiefs have a very easy schedule, which I can read you real quick, and they've had an easy schedule since Thanksgiving.
It should be Baltimore, Cleveland, and Oakland, if I remember off the top of my head.
Yep, that's correct. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers play Denver. Yeah, exactly. Isn't that great for the Jets? And they
play Denver, Baltimore, and Cleveland, if I remember off the top of my head.
Right. So there is no way that the Jets have an easier schedule than those two teams. Let's see. They have the Patriots in there. We know that, right? They have the Cowboys, Patriots, Bills.
And the Bills, yep. I think they did those. They flashed up the winning percentages on SportsCenter, and the Jets' combined winning percentage against is over 500, and both other two teams are sub 500. So that already is just not a good sign.
Not good. And it feels like, as good as the Jets have been playing, which Fitzpatrick has been great. Their defense has been spotty, but can obviously make plays and is talented enough to make plays. It just feels like, the Chiefs are the team that's screwing this up because it feels like the Steelers are a playoff team. The way that they play when healthy, like they could actually compete to make it to the Super Bowl when healthy.
Yep.
And the Chiefs have been the team screwing this up. How many have they won in a row? 7? That's crazy. That's crazy.
They're not even that good.
Right.
I think they're the worst of the three teams.
Yep.
Easily.
Overall, yeah. Yep.
The other race, of course, is the AFC South.
Which, I know, okay, go ahead. We talked about the NFC East because that humored me. Go ahead.
We have
Indianapolis. I know.
Listen, both are equally as terrible.
Yeah, so I would like to think the AFC South is worse as a division, but go ahead.
Well, it's close. The funny thing about the AFC South is you can realistically see this division in 2 or 3 years becoming one of the best divisions in football.
Yep.
You've got the Colts, which will get Andrew Luck back. Blake Bortles has looks like he's taken the next step.
Yeah.
You've got Mariota in Tennessee, and you would hope that Tennessee gets some players around Mariota and can turn that tide. And you just hand Houston a quarterback, and they're one of the better teams in the National Football League. So this could be a division that turns around real quick. But speaking for this season, you've got the Colts against the Texans this week, which in all likelihood is probably for the division. If the Colts lose and fall to 3-2 in the division, and the Texans wind up controlling their own destiny, they get the Titans next week and the Jags the week after, and that Jags game is home. I would love to find a way to sit here and tell you that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to come out of this division and make the playoffs, because I really think that would be just awesome for that franchise because they don't draw anybody. They have fans.
Yeah, hold on 1 second, Jordan. You're breaking up. Try that sentence again.
The Jags are not necessarily the best draw, but that is a fun upcoming team to watch. They're competitive. They can really stick it to you offensively between their ability to throw the ball and Bortles and the attack that they have with Bortles and Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns. Yeah, I really like what they're doing in Jacksonville, and I would love to see them in the playoffs, but it's hard for me to sit here and tell you any team but Houston's coming out of there because Houston, I think, beats Indy this week, and I think whoever wins that game between Houston and Indy is just going to win the division.
Wow. Yeah, all I got to say is I agree with all of that. I would love to see Jacksonville get in, and they're just colored helmets. That drives me nuts. The point differential, the Jags actually have the best point differential by a point over Houston. I get it, but they have the best point differential in the conference. In the division, in their division. So for whatever that's worth, despite them being 5-8, I agree they're an exciting team, and I do hope they find a way to mess this whole thing up and get in, because that would be what that division deserves after this bad of a year. As we wrap it up, who do you think? We kind of said Arizona's the team to watch in the NFC, and I agree. Who do you think is the team to watch that may come out of the AFC?
It's cliche, but it has to be New England. With all of their injuries, they have to be the most interesting team because if they can somehow get healthy, you still think that they're the favorite. My personal opinion was, I've said this throughout anybody that I've talked to for all 14 weeks, I didn't think New England was winning a playoff game to start the year. I thought this team was more like the teams that lost to the Ravens and the Jets in 2010 and 2012 than the teams that made Super Bowl runs, because I didn't think their defense would get enough stops when they played the better teams, which means Tom would have to play a perfect game somewhere along the line, just get a perfect game, and you get beat. And I thought that was what this team's makeup was. Now they've got all the injuries, so now that's even more true. It's unfortunate because I would have really loved to have been right with a healthy team, but I'll take being right any way I can get it.
Yeah.
They have to be the most interesting team.
Oh yeah. No, I agree. New England is the team to beat, and their defense is actually they actually have a pass rush, which is helpful. Their secondary is pretty bad, but having a pass rush is good. Just ask Giants fans; that can cover up a lot of crap. But yeah, New England's an interesting team, and I think if not New England, it kind of narrows itself down. Cincinnati's kind of screwed, unfortunately, depending on how good McCarron can play. But fun fact about Alabama quarterbacks, I think they're 0-13 in their last 13 games in the NFL, and that's a crazy, crazy stat. So we'll see if McCarron can get a win. But Cincinnati in the playoffs without Dalton is an issue. And Denver should be a team that can compete. We'll see how Peyton does. I like Pittsburgh, too, as a sneaky team to watch. It feels like they're coming together and playing their best football at the right time. And I think if they could be a team that, kind of makes a run in the playoffs.
The question with Pittsburgh is just going to be, can they get enough stops? Because that offense is really clicking right now. They're playing terrific football. And just to give my Jets a shout-out, by the way, if you're looking for a team that can beat New England, I don't know if you have a better matchup than the Jets. Now, I could be proven wrong in 2 weeks because, to be honest, if in 2 weeks the Jets don't beat New England with this depleted roster, without Julian Edelman, maybe without Devin McCourty, without LeGarrette Blount, without Deion Lewis, if the Jets don't, and the Jets are at home, if the Jets don't win that football game, then I'm wrong. Even if they made their way into the post and drew them again, I'm wrong. They're not the best matchup. But if I'm right, you'll see in 2 weeks, you're going to see a team that is able to run the ball on New England. They're able to control the clock with third down efficiency, and they're able to score in the red zone with Marshall and Decker. If I'm right, that's the Jets' recipe to beat New England. If I'm wrong, well, then this is probably a day like any other day.
Yeah, that is a great place to leave it. You can follow me on Twitter at Joseph Zocco. You can follow Jordan on Twitter at
Jordan Katz 11. And a quick shameless plug here, Joe. Getting started stuff. Threw up an article on draftstock.net. Myself and my buddy Mike run the site. We threw up an article called I Was Right, I Was Wrong, sort of our recap of how we viewed the 2015 draft class and what's played out through 14 weeks. Sort of something a little different than your prototypical, here's a player, this is his grade thus far through the season. A lot of websites do that. We tried to give you something a little different. So we're getting started on our mock draft coverage, draftstock.net. Yeah,
great site. I use it all the time since I don't follow the NFL like Jordan does. And yeah, very, very good stuff on that site. Thank you very much, Jordan. It's a pleasure as always.
Fun as always, Joe. Definitely got to do it again. Maybe something for an NFL postseason prediction, and we can recap the halfway point of the NBA season, maybe something like that.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely, for sure. I'll have you back. Stay tuned for more stuff on Zocco's Modern Life, and thank you for listening.